Hey everyone. If you're anything like me, you often find yourself looking for business insight in podcasts. And I'm sure many of you are also into meditation and reflection to help better understand yourself. Former guest of the show, Carl Bonner, decided to launch a podcast that brings these two elements together. It's a series of guided self-reflection exercises, but specifically for freelance creatives like you and me, focusing on the struggles we face as we try to grow our businesses, while also finding more happiness in the work that we do. It's called Thanks for Thinking. It's definitely an unusual format, but if you want to grow your self-awareness, find deeper career satisfaction, and make more money, then I think this podcast might be for you. Experience it for yourself and click the link in the show notes below. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 135 with Daniel Silberman. I had a great chat with Daniel. This is his second episode on the podcast, and just like last time, we talked about so many awesome things, including taking on less clients and giving more to the artists he chooses to work with. We talked about having a mutual respect between the artist and the engineer. We talked about how he overcame a bizarre illness and an injury, and he relearned how to play the guitar and the bass in a completely new way. We went really deep on mixing, specifically Dan's extensive approach to stereo bus processing. We talked about how he can get the benefits of analog in the box, saturation and width. We also talk about Pultec attenuation and psychoacoustics, why not to be afraid to push things to their max and hear what they're doing, why you should select your mixers and masters according to the project. We talked about chopping stuff up by hand, monitoring and mid-range, prioritizing the things that bring you joy, and everything in between. So I think you're going to love this conversation. So with all that to say, here's my conversation with Dan Silberman, once again, here on Secret Sonics. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I am your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Dan Silberman. Dan is a Chicagoland native and award-winning producer, engineer, composer, and musician. Dan first appeared on the podcast back in May of 2020, so obviously a lot has happened since then, and I figured I'd reach out to see if he'd want to join me again, which he graciously agreed to do. So with all that to say, welcome back to Secret Sonics, Dan.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure the first time, and I'm very happy to be back.
So yeah, I would love to just have a schmooze with you and just see like how things are going, catch up. I mean, I know that you've gone through things, that we've all gone through things.
Yeah, right.
Like bring us a little bit up to date. How have things been, and what are you working on these days?
So things have honestly been really fantastic, knock on wood. Since we last talked, I've kind of reimagined my work and normal life kind of balance and what I am willing to work on anymore, which is a very fortunate thing to be able to say. But yeah, I mean, 2020 was a roller coaster of a year till the end. Ended up parting ways with a lot of clients that, you know, my thing that year was basically I really wanted to focus more on really only doing music that I was interested in and artists that I really like. We had the connection to work together. I had been in hustle mode for, you know, so long, where it's just like you take anything that comes your way within reason, and
you're
just working insane hours, which is awesome. But you know, there was a lot of times that I'd have stuff with clients, and it just didn't make sense. Either for them why they were hiring me, or for me why I was working with them. Because there were just certain things that, you know, when you have clients that things gel, you know, there's very few hiccups and road bumps, or if there are, you know, you get over them rather quickly. Whereas, you know, I was finding with certain people that I was dealing with that it was just like, I couldn't understand why, when you boil it down, I couldn't understand why they hired me, because it's like my work is out there and the people that I've worked with and what I offer and what I do. So it's kind of like, if you're hiring me and then wanting me to do like your thing, like obviously we're doing your thing, but it's going to be through my lenses. And if my lenses aren't, you know, exactly what you're looking for, like there's so many engineers out there. Like there's someone that's going to be, you know, a good engineer that's going to vibe with you way more than I am. And so I've really, really been picky about who I take on as clients anymore, because I want to be invested as much as the client. And I want to make sure that, you know, when it comes time to like mixing or anything like that, I'm sure you've encountered this before as a mixer where, you know, you mix a song and then you get 3 pages of notes back.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like, you know, when I deal with label clients, I don't get 3 pages of notes back. I get, you know, a few tweaks
3
here and there,
Yeah.
or, you know, unless they don't like the vibe that I went for and I have to kind of restart, which is fine. Like, you know, that's a perfectly acceptable thing. But, you know, when you're getting, 1, 2, 3
Yeah.
pages of notes, I'm not the right mixer for you. And it's like, you know, I just started having the conversation with people like, look, this is what I'm offering. Like, you hired me. It's like the same thing. You know, you wouldn't hire a carpenter that, you know, doesn't have good reviews or you've like seen their work, especially nowadays where you can just go on Yelp and see examples of their work. It's kind of just like, you know who you're getting into bed with now. It's not like the 1980s or 70s where it's a little bit more of a mystery. Like there's so much ways to get information on how people are doing things that it's just not necessary. And it just adds so much more headache. And I found since kind of eliminating those people in my work life that 1, my work has gotten, you know, much more enjoyable. And 2, it really lets me dive much deeper with clients than I previously had time for. You know, it really allows me to like get in rather than being like, all right, I'm doing this project today and a completely different one tomorrow. And then this, it's kind of like, all right, you know, I may have less sessions during my week than I used to, but that gives me a lot more creative time and freedom to basically work on this stuff, you know, whether it's off the clock or on the clock, you know what I mean? Like if I'm invested as the client, then to me, our goal is the same thing. So as long as I'm having fun, I don't mind putting in some extra sweat equity to just kind of make things even better if possible.
Yeah. But was it difficult like financially when you made that move? Like I feel like a lot of people are on the edge of like, I mean, I'll tell you like what I'm trying to do now is to kind of shift the pie of being like, you know, okay, I'm working on this stuff that I'm like, I wouldn't even say necessarily passionate about, but I'm like, I'm doing some podcast work, I'm doing music production, I'm doing mixing, I'm doing like other random audio projects. And so like, how can I like expand my pie to just mostly mixing and producing, right? Or like, you know, 70% mixing, 30% producing or something like that. You know what I mean? But it's hard to say no to work. And then you know, inevitably there's some, you know, there's going to be some sort of dip, right?
Exactly. And so like I was talking to my wife in the car the other day and basically saying like, I'm honestly so surprised that I have less quote unquote sessions or work, you know, or client attended work than I ever have in my life. And I'm much happier. And it's not the sense of being happy because I don't have clients. It's because the clients that I'm now working with and, you know, who I choose and they choose, you know, like we have this mutual connection that makes everything kind of very symbiotic and it just works. But to answer the question about the financial parts of it, that's a little bit harder because, you know, it's really case by case situations. In my case, what we kind of figured out really kind of breaks down to a similar situation that mothers in the US kind of go through this, especially working mothers, is like when you have a child, is it cheaper to stay home and parent the child, or is it cheaper to go to work and pay for daycare? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I totally. I know
so
exactly
like,
what you mean.
And using that kind of philosophy, basically, it made the decision a lot easier for me because there were things in my life and lifestyle that were being done because of the fact of this rigorous hourly, you know, work schedule. You know, like my wife works a corporate job. Like she's, you know, at the time when she was working her old job, she was like, you know, 9 to 8 every day, like 10, 11-hour days almost every day, you know, 2 days off, but that was her thing. And I was kind of doing the same thing. I was, you know, going from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. or, you know, right around when dinner time would be, which for us at that period of time was super late. But, it just caught one of those things where, like one of the big line items that I saw that we were just wasting so much money on was eating out and not being able to cook. And I was like, well, okay, so if I take less clients, it's going to mean less money. But if we're not spending that money on eating out, how does that make it work? And what it ended up, it was 100% the exact same amount of actual income at the end of the day when you figure in expenses and all that.
That's so interesting.
And if not more income, because now when I take extra work, it's built into that schedule.
You have more cushion for that extra work. You have the
exactly.
margin.
So exactly. Yeah. So honestly, it's also opened me up to take projects that normally would be way under my budget. That I'm like, oh, this is an amazing project. Like normally I would have to turn this down because my schedule would be completely booked for a year. And it's like, oh no, I'm not anymore. And I'm okay with that. And it's like, oh, this comes along. And it's like, oh, okay, so you can't pay my exact rate that I'd want, but the music is awesome. You guys are awesome. And like, we can figure something out. 100%. Now I can do it. And there's no like if, ands, or buts about it. Like I can just say, all right, we're doing this. And I don't have to be like, oh, every minute that we're just wasting time, like just, it's this, thing. It's like, no, it's like, you can kind of just relax and really concentrate on the art and, really have a good time.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually just spoke with a guy named Andy Reid, whose episode is coming out on Sunday. And I was really inspired by this part of the conversation where he said, he tries to like make a song in a day and he prioritizes like the artist experience for that day. It's like, hey, are you going to remember like, in some ways, you're going to remember the experience of being in the studio more than you remember like the music. It's like, hey,
right.
Like this is like the best time. Like I'm in the studio making my music, and I was just thinking about, and I've been thinking about that now with like my sessions. I'll be like, hey, this person's like trying to really enjoy their session. Like let them have that experience, and don't necessarily be a total taskmaster. Let's do this again. Blah blah blah. This is our time limit. Like let them enjoy the moment. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
I found that like super cool.
100%. So that's one aspect of it financially. Obviously, I understand that there's people who don't have that luxury, but I will say that if you've spent enough time hustling and your name is out there and your quality of work is high, it's not, I feel like that's kind of a douchey thing to say, but it's kind of the truth in that.
It's not douchey. I don't think it's douchey.
Okay. It's just one of those things that like I spent, I've been hustling as a performer and an engineer since I was 15 or 16 years old. At a certain point, like I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. And I don't need to prove anything to myself anymore. And it's like, when do I get to enjoy my life? Not that I didn't enjoy the projects that I worked on previously, because that's the way it sounds, the way I'm talking about it. And that's not the case. There's a handful of projects I did not, but there was a lot that I did.
It sounds like there was just a lot of overwhelm and the grind wearing you out.
Yeah, yes and no. So the grind definitely didn't wear me out. Again, I think it's just one of those genetic predispositions that like I can grind, but it was more of like I was grinding for people who I didn't feel the respect. I would respect them, but I didn't feel like I was being respected back the same amount. Not that I feel like I'm, tippy top of the pinnacle of like, oh, you hold me on this pedestal, but it's more of like if I'm putting in this effort and I'm giving you like a month of my time,
and it's like you're giving 110%, and they're just
giving
like,
70.
oh yeah, I'll get back to you in a couple days. Like I'm like, yo, I'm literally trying to get your mix done, right? Like,
yeah,
I totally know that of like
exactly.
It's the road of like, why do I give more of a shit about this music than the band? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I had one client. Who obviously I will not name, but like they would book out like full days, and we had this kind of agreement, money wise. They would end up showing up super late every single time, and I'm like, man, like to me it doesn't matter if you're late. It's more of like you need to tell me you're going to be late, or like basically like if I have time to run errands in the morning or get stuff done. And I'm not just sitting here waiting with the loaded Pro Tools and being like, where the fuck are you? That's different. Again, and that's where I felt like it was a respect thing. It's like, if you're habitually late, then that's fine. But like, don't expect me to be there on time waiting, especially when I'm not getting paid per se by the hour for said project. You know, it's stuff like that where it's just like,